Welcome to This Endorian Life, a Star Wars podcast from the Radio Meanwhile Network. My name is Steve Rudd.
I'm Nick Gunning, and today we're following the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi to the TV movies, the cartoons, the comics, and beyond.
And beyond, yeah. So today we are discussing Ewoks Comics issue number 7, The Perilous Laughing Spell. This issue hit the stands on February 4th, 1986. We were wee boys. Yes.
Today's issue is illustrated by Warren Kremer, written by David Manek. It was collected in the softcover by Dark Horse in the Star Wars Omnibus Ewoks and Droids. David Manek is our featured creative today. He was apparently the go-to guy when it comes to adapting 80s TV into comic books because he worked on the Elf series based on the NBC sitcom. It ran for 50 issues plus several specials. It outlasted the actual show itself. It was a huge hit. The Elf comic was like a huge seller, apparently. And David Manek was there the whole journey with Elf. He has a really active website. You can check it out at davemanek.com. You can get commissions done. You can ask questions. It's a cool website, so check it out.
That is cool. I remember Alf being like, I remember that being very popular.
Oh, yeah.
When I was young. I don't know, something about it. Like, just people really loved Alf.
Yeah. So, I've got a little Elf. Remember Pizza Hut? Or I think it was Pizza Hut. Had those Elf puppets. I've got an Elf puppet. Like, I can see it right now where I'm sitting. So, yeah.
Oh, man. That's really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what a crazy show.
Elf also had an animated series. So when the time comes that we finish Star Wars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, after the Dukes of Hazzard cartoon and Back to the Future or whatever, we'll do it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, the Back to the Future was what, like one or two seasons?
It is 2 seasons, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Isn't that crazy how that, I mean, these shows like really date a person when they're like, oh, yeah, I remember Alf. And I'm like, I immediately know how old you are.
Yeah,
know? And we're gonna get along.
Yeah.
You know? It's just like really funny. It's like, oh, yeah, I loved Alf.
Yeah, Elf holds up. Elf holds up.
Who hated Alf? Yeah,
I saw an episode of Elf not that long ago, just like flipping through the channels or something, and I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, yeah, it's still funny. It still works.
It's still funny. Yeah. It's timeless.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, shall I take us out?
Yeah.
All right, the uber detailed plot of Ewoks number 7, The Perilous Laughing Spell. Wicket, Teebo, and Nisa take time out of collecting honey melons to take a dip in their favorite swimming hole. But instead of joining them, Teebo decides to work on his poem. He wanders off and discovers a bluebird laughing hysterically. Quick to anger, Teebo thinks the bird is laughing at his poem, but the bird flies off, leaving a tail feather behind in Teebo's hand. He stashes the feather in his hat as a treasure for defending his creativity and is suddenly affected.
Oh.
So Wicket and Nisa discover Teebo laughing hysterically and bouncing around the forest, not carrying his basket of melons. Instead of helping them, he causes the melons to scatter everywhere. Wicket and Nisa can tell Teebo is under some sort of spell, so they try and stop him before he hurts himself. Teebo makes it back to the village first, where he completely destroys, instead of helping Nito build his new hut, laughing the whole time. When the hut collapses, Teebo emerges from the heap, while Nito, instead of being outraged, begins to laugh himself, but quickly catches himself. Teebo terrorizes others in the village, who all report to Chief Chirpa to complain. One of the Ewoks spots Teebo climbing through a window, and a tussle ensues to try and capture him. That's mixed with hysterical laughter from everyone. Even Wicket cracks up when he tries to seize his friend. Nisa and Logray burst in quickly, separating everyone from Teebo. Logray removes the enchanted feather, but is afraid doing so won't fully cure Teebo. The only cure he can think of is from a being located at the top of Mount Sorrow, whose tears reverse spells just like this. They set off immediately as Teebo's laughs are starting to hurt.
Oh.
They begin with Teebo tied to a rope, but he quickly pranks them by tying a stone to the rope just for fun.
Yeah, they're trying to pull him up the cliff by holding onto the rope, and I'm like, are they killing Teebo right now? What's happening?
Yeah, like they're hanging him, like
in
the crowd. Like
that is what it looked like. 100%.
Yeah, won't feel bad.
Yeah.
Of course, he's got like a foot and a half of that rope on the other side of his hand. Like if he slips, then like that's Teebo's gone.
Yeah.
Right, but it's just a rock, right? So that's convenient.
Classic.
So they all reach the top of the mountain and are greeted by the peak, who speaks to them saying that if Teebo is worthy, then he will weep for him. When little weird, but okay. When
Yes.
Teebo gets close, the mountain starts to laugh, and the peak says Teebo is unworthy for nearly destroying him and insulting him. Wicket and Nisa try and argue, but it's no use. The peak begins to blow them away. Fearing for his friends' lives, Teebo quickly saves Wicket and Nisa from being blown off the side of a nearby cliff. Teebo suggests they leave, even though the tears could help him, because he would rather spend the rest of his life under a spell than risk losing his friends. Suddenly, Teebo is drenched from above. Teebo gets up mad, and Wicket realizes Teebo's no longer laughing. They all look at the peak, who is sobbing because he's never seen anyone more worthy of his tears. They thank the peak and begin to leave. Teebo now feels wonderful again and expresses he has an idea for a great poem, but both Wicket and Nisa cover his mouth. Embarrassed, Teebo claims he was just kidding. Roll credit.
So we're learning for the first time today that Teebo loves poetry and is always writing poetry.
Apparently, yeah.
They're like
He works on it
classic
quite a bit.
Teebo.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about Jack Kirby in our last comic book episode because of like the headdress of the guy, remember? This
Yeah.
like living mountain man, the way the mountain man looks and the whole thing is very Kirby-esque, like the Eternals or
Really?
something. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
He looks
So
like the
I
sword of
wonder
that.
because we saw like, you know, George Rossos and others who are involved in this were like working with Marvel in the Kirby era. So I wonder if maybe they are pulling some inspirations because it's been a couple things now where we've both kind of pointed out, yeah, that looks like Jack Kirby.
Yeah, Jack Kirby. I mean, he's really influenced the industry,
True.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. It'd be hard not to, I guess, make some homages there.
I mean, you see a guy like that, and you're immediately like, "Yeah, he's the villain."
Yeah.
Look at him; he's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
villain. You just know, right?
You do. Always love to get a new Ewok, a new named Ewok.
Yeah.
So we got
Apparently, he's
Netto.
grumpy too, right? Netto.
He's the most curmudgeonly Ewok that there is. Maybe he'll come back. Who knows? Maybe he'll be in more comics. We don't. There's like a mother and daughter that we meet. They don't get names. They're just.
They don't get names. No.
They're like,
And
come,
then
daughter. Yes, mother.
He does spill over somebody's honey. That's mentioned, but we don't see who it is until
okay.
the people who are. We don't see that scene.
Yeah.
But we see like the people that he did it to.
Right.
When they all complain.
His victims.
Yeah, we see the victims. Yeah. Which I think is actually kind of clever. I thought I was like, oh, I didn't see that, and I like flipped back, and then I flipped forward, and I was like, oh yeah, we only saw 3 people, but there's like 6 people.
There's a bunch of people.
5 people or so that complain. Yeah. So it's like I thought that was like that's clever.
The director's cut of this issue is just off the wall.
Yeah. It's like 17 more pages.
Yeah.
It's black and white too. It's Snyder cut.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that, I mean, I thought that was cool. I like that we got a little bit of village action. We saw. I feel like this is the most Ewoks we've ever seen in one place.
Yeah,
and they were pretty unique too. So you know, we're still doing the muted colors, but I felt like they did some interesting things with blues and stuff with the other Ewoks that was kind of atypical. I felt like Teebo looked like Wicket the entire time. Like they colored him the way Wicket is colored.
Yeah, the coloring's still a little. You're right. I say interesting. Isn't it funny how you like we catch those things?
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's like,
well, it just stood out to me this time because it was confusing. But what did you think of the episode overall? Hit me with your Oak of Arc moment. What was your least favorite?
Man, so all right. It really bothered me that a being with the power to cure spells like this, Logray was like, I've only ever heard of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, you mean these kids go and find it? You've never in your life, as the shaman of this village, have gone out to inspect it yourself and gone to this peak and know that it's not just a being, but it's literally the peak of the mountain itself.
Yeah.
In case you need to cure a spell like this. To me, that was just like,
never
what?
checks it out. Well, I thought to go one further there, I thought it was funny that they were just like, yeah. So why don't you children go and cure Teebo? Like no adults went with them.
Yeah, like
you know
no one cared.
Usually when something like this happens, there's a reason why. It's just the kids going. But this time the adults were like, just have at it.
He's like,
you know,
he's like,
we're
I've
a couple
heard
years
of this,
in, just.
But don't even bother. We didn't get like the end of that conversation. He was just like, oh yeah,
sure.
And of course the kids are like, well, we need to set out right away, you know, and it's
just
like
take off. Yeah.
And I mean, what bothered me too was that like they Teebo's laughs started to hurt at the end of the second
Yeah.
part, and they never went into details and like he's like I thought, oh, that's compelling. Like now his laughing is hurting,
Yeah.
you know. So like my other oak of arc is like, well, I mean, like what happens to the bird then? Does it just
Yeah.
die of laughter?
I was wondering, like, is because the other people like laughed, they had their laughing fits and then they got over it, and Teebo didn't. So I guess it was the feather. And then is it that Teebo's kind of sticks because he had the feather too long?
I think
He's
so, and
like
that's
it's just
kind of
the
what I gathered. Yeah,
okay,
that everyone was like the magic just kind of rubbed off on people slightly
but he really
while he
settled in.
interacted.
So yeah,
And
okay,
it was, and so like,
okay.
but then the bird, like, I guess like the spell was on the bird, but the whole bird was under the spell, which is like a weird. So it's like the
Oh,
spell
I
was
thought the
slightly
bird
different.
caused it.
I mean, did he? I thought the
Oh
bird was
no,
under the spell.
I thought the magic came from the bird, but maybe I'm
Oh,
just
and
making that up. Maybe
it
that's
was
just my
like a
brain trying
laughing
to give it.
bird.
I thought it was a
That is
magical bird.
that's totally not how I interpreted that, but that's
So I guess because like Logray or somebody calls it a loony bird, I thought they were. I thought
oh, yeah,
I
okay.
thought we
I
were
thought he was
supposed to.
calling him that because he was referencing that he was just laughing. So that makes
Yeah,
a lot more sense now. Okay. That's why he knew it was the feather. Because when I was reading, I
yeah,
was just like, what? How do you know that was a feather?
yeah.
Like,
So
that
I
was
think
really
it is
quick.
the yeah. So that's
Okay.
something. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes a lot more sense. So the bird does not die. It just laughs.
Yeah, and infects
But then,
people
like,
with laughter.
I think that would have been an interesting and compelling part of the story if, like, Teebo was like, "Ow, like I'm really starting to hurt," like
Yeah,
physically, and it was just like, like Teebo could die, and
yeah,
I think that would have been better for them to be like, "Oh, like I know the village elders think like you'll be okay, but it seems like you're not," because
yeah.
clearly Logray wasn't necessarily familiar
Right.
with
Yeah.
effects
I've
of
heard
it was
something about it. I don't know.
and I've like heard it could be cured, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it was all kind of like hearsay, so like. I mean, I guess that's a good thing too, because then the kids take their initiative. But
Yeah.
what about you? What bothered you about this?
Mine is about the finale as well. I just found the whole like sentient mountain who like was moved to tears with the power of their
Yeah.
friendship as the cure. I just thought that was really stupid. I have to give them props for not just being like, you have to go get a flower from the top of that mountain, because that's been done to death. So like
Yeah.
having this sort of magical creature that like weeps tears that fix spells. I don't know. It was something like it was more than just
Well,
like go get this one plant that only grows on
yeah.
this part of the. But I still thought his whole thing, he doesn't. He's like, oh yes, you've proved your worth, and I just thought it was very corny.
It was almost like they had this character slated for something else. Where there was an issue, a 3-part issue where they're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, like, oh, Wicked, I heard there's this being that, like, can decide if you're worthy or
yeah,
not." And he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
I wanna go." And he goes, and he's deemed not worthy. And then
yeah.
the second part, he goes and he does something that deems him worthy. And then the third part, they go and he's deemed worthy. Like, it's almost like they shunted in the ending to another trilogy into this trilogy because it had nothing to do with
Hmm.
the first 2 issues,
That
the first 2
actually kind
parts.
of rolls into my Ichiwawa moment. Shall I share it with you?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I liked the structure of this because I felt like we have 3 acts, we have 3 little sections within this one
Okay.
issue. And I felt like each one represented one of the different kinds of episodes that we've gotten like over the years. We had the
Uh,
they're out in the forest and they stumble into trouble episode. Then we
yeah.
have the oh no, something's afoot in the village. We have to solve this thing in the village episode.
Chaos,
And
yeah.
then we had the kids have to go on a scary journey to a magical land thing. So I kind of liked that we got all 3 types of Ewok
That's a good
stories
point.
in one issue.
That is a really good point, actually. That's funny. This one, because when I was reading it, I did feel like one of them, I was just like, one of the parts, I was like, oh, that would have been a really good episode.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was the first one where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that just feels like it would have been a part of it, like an episode.
Yeah. So I
So
like I like that it was a mix of the 3. What about you? What's your Ichiwawa moment?
mine was, of course, Teebo's love for his friends. I thought that was like well written, where he was just like, you know what, I'm willing to, like after almost seeing his friends die and saving them, he's just like, you know what, I'm willing to live with this.
Yeah.
Let's not worry about it, because like Teebo and Nisa like tried to vouch for him, and the mountain was like, no, and blows him
Yeah.
away. And so he's like, forget it, guys. I'm okay with giggling every
Yeah,
once in a
I'd rather
while.
stay like this and have you guys.
Yeah,
You're right. It was
I
cute. It
thought
was
that
a
was
nice.
pretty cool.
It was
Yeah,
a
that was a
tender.
nice
It was a
touch.
tender moment. So yeah. Here's a question we don't ask very often anymore. Was there a moral lesson? Do you think?
I'm gonna say a big fat no.
Okay.
I don't think there's
All
a
right.
moral lesson on it.
Yeah, that's why
Don't
we
do
don't ask.
poetry.
That's why we don't ask the question anymore, because
It is kind of funny though that
the
they
stuff
like
he meant.
covered his mouth like the poetry had anything to do with
I
anything.
know. I thought that too. It was like it's not
I
like the
was like,
poetry is what
why?
got him in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was like a weird flex,
Okay.
but like okay, like
I mean, I suppose if he wasn't doing the poetry, he would have been just swimming with them, and none of this would have happened. So maybe that's the
okay.
tie-in. I don't know.
Yeah.
How many
that
yub-nubs
makes
do you give this one?
I don't know. I thought this one was pretty good, but I think I'd give this one a solid 4. I wasn't super
Okay.
impressed, but I really had to find something I didn't like.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like my Oak of Arcs are like fairly weak.
Yeah.
Like low grade didn't know where to
Yeah.
find a cure for.
Yeah.
Like that's really not like okay. That's like extraneous.
You love your niche, Oakarks. Don't pretend.
Yeah.
Like you
So
don't.
I'd say I'd give it a 4 because I wasn't like super impressed, but I did think that it would have been a fairly good episode. And I feel like if maybe it were an actual animated episode, I'd probably give it a higher score, just because it would have been very entertaining as a
Yeah.
as a 20-minute length episode or a 15
Yeah.
minute length episode. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go lower. I'm gonna say 3.5. It just
Okay.
I don't really have much to say negative about it. It just kind of washed over me. Maybe if there would have been more of a villain in it, like if somebody had sort of cast a spell, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe I would have liked that better. Maybe that would have worked with the sort of the 3-act structure that they did in this.
That tracks.
I don't know.
Yeah, because that's what we're used to.
It's just
Yeah.
fine, is what I'd say. It's just fine. So
It's fine.
yeah.
It's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I learned a devastating fact after our last episode. Remember how we were talking about droids and we are like, oh, finally we're done with Mungo Baobab and we can just move on to this little standalone droids. Nope. Instead, next time, Steve, we'll be traveling back in time for the first Star Wars prequel, Droids: The Great Heap, which is a prequel to the Mungo Baobab episodes.
So you're telling me we're gonna get more Mungo Baobab?
More Mungo. Yeah. Why? Like, why they would? How confusing would that have been for like a child at the time? And why do we need more Mungo? I don't. I need less,
man. Out of all of them, Jan Tosh, I feel like was one of the better
Jan.
ones. And
we all like Jan. Yeah.
Jan Tosh was good.
Not the Rat Tail Bikers, but Jan Tosh. I think we liked. We liked that overall. Not those
bikers.
guys. No,
the White Witch drivers.
Yeah, I didn't like those. I didn't like those guys at all.
So unmemorable. They're just the White Witch drivers. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember.
So if you're yeah. So if you're watching along with us, The Great Heap on Disney Plus is listed as like season 2. It's the only thing that's in season 2. It's available in other places too if you look hard enough. But we are going to be talking about The Great Heap, and that will bring our journey on the Droids cartoon to a close.
Oh man,
Steve, I'll see you next time.
I'll see you then. This Endorian Life was brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include 90s Music Got Me Like, previously on X-Men, and 9021 Here We Go. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook or X at Endorian Life. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show wherever you get